My wife of 10 years cheated on me with her boss, and now she's claiming I sabotaged her career but secretly stole over $200, $0 from our joint account. Our house and savings are now in legal limbo. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this all out, but here I am. It started with a gut feeling. Something just didn't sit right anymore. My wife and I have been together for 10 years, married for 8. We had a pretty normal life, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs, decent jobs, or so I thought. But over the past few months, I noticed her becoming more distant, secretive even. She'd hide her phone, get defensive when I asked about her plans, and suddenly her schedule was packed with work meetings that she refused to tell me much about. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe she was just stressed with work or dealing with some personal stuff. But deep down, I knew something was off. Then came the night I found her phone. I wasn't snooping. Well, maybe I was a little, but it was late and I was just trying to find the remote. I saw a message pop up from someone named that said, "Can't wait to see you tonight. The boss is going to love it." My stomach sank. I froze. My mind raced, trying to process what I just read. I clicked on her messages and what I saw made me feel like I'd been punched in the gut. There were dozens of texts, flirty and suggestive, talking about meeting up after work, secret plans, and even explicit talk about sex. It was obvious. She was cheating on me with her boss, a guy named who she always claimed was just a colleague and not a big deal. I felt numb. It was like my entire world was crashing down in those seconds. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was there. I looked at her phone, then at her face when she came home that night. She played it cool, acting like nothing was wrong, asking me how my day was, trying to brush off my questions about her late nights and her evasiveness. But I knew. Deep down, I knew she was lying. I kept quiet for a few days, just trying to process everything. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could she do this? After a decade, after building a life together, she was out there sneaking around, having sex with her boss, probably during work hours, maybe even in the office. And she was lying to my face about it. I was livid, but I also felt betrayed and hurt. I couldn't sleep. I started digging into our finances, trying to find any signs of what she might be hiding. That's when I discovered something else: money. Large transfers, strange withdrawals. Over $200, $0 gone from our joint account. I couldn't believe it. How could she steal that much money? And why? I confronted her about the affair first. I wanted clarity, wanted to hear her lie to my face. I told her I knew everything about the money. Her reaction was classic. She started crying, claiming she never cheated, that I was paranoid, that I was sabotaging her career. She said I was accusing her of things I couldn't possibly understand, that she's been stressed and overwhelmed with work, and that I was just making everything worse. She even had the nerve to say I was the one who was paranoid, that I was projecting my insecurities onto her. I asked her about the money and her face went pale. She insisted she had no idea where it went and that I was just trying to ruin her. Her words didn't match what I saw. I knew she was lying, but I also knew I needed to be careful. I couldn't just accuse her without evidence. But I felt the anger bubbling up. How could she betray me like this? After everything we'd been through, she throws it all away for some affair and some money she stole. It felt like my entire life was crumbling, and I was left standing there, trying to hold the pieces together while she played the victim. I was furious, hurt, and confused all at once. I didn't sleep that night, and I knew things would never be the same. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep at night. Every time I looked at, I saw a stranger, someone I thought I knew, but who had been hiding a completely different life behind my back. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was just paranoid. That was just a who helped her with some projects, but I knew better. I had seen the messages, the texts, the late nights she didn't want to explain. It wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal of everything we had built. I started digging deeper into our finances. I got access to the bank statements, the transaction history. That's when I saw it: massive withdrawals, transfers to accounts I'd never heard of, and some suspicious wire transfers to offshore accounts. Over $200, $0 had disappeared from our joint account in just a few months. I couldn't believe it. My mind raced with questions. How did she steal that much? Was she involved in something bigger? And if she was cheating on me was the money connected? Was she laundering it? My head was spinning. I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with some proof. I sat her down, told her I knew about the money, about everything. Her face twisted into a sneer. She rolled her eyes and said, "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I spend so much time working. You think I'm having an affair, please." She tried to dismiss it all, act like I was overreacting, but I was furious. I told her I had the bank statements, the wire transfers, everything. I showed her the evidence, expecting her to crack. Instead, she looked at me with that bitchy smirk and said, "You're just trying to ruin me. You're jealous, insecure, and you're accusing me of things I didn't do." That was the breaking point. I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not just about the affair, but about the money, about her entire version of reality. I knew I had to do something drastic. I couldn't let her keep lying, stealing, and pretending everything was fine. I started to plan my next move carefully. I needed to gather more evidence, talk to a lawyer, figure out what my options were. I was already feeling the weight of betrayal, but I knew I had to stay calm, at least for now. I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me. Meanwhile, was still acting as if everything was normal. She'd throw tantrums when I questioned her, call me paranoid, accuse me of not trusting her. But I saw through her act. She was furious that I was onto her, but she also knew she had me cornered. She kept insisting she was innocent, of the affair, of the theft. But the more I realized how deep her lies went. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, and I was desperate for answers. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust again, or if I'd just be left with the wreckage of what was supposed to be my life. After I gathered enough evidence, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The betrayal was too big, and I had to act fast. I made an appointment with a lawyer first thing the next morning. Sitting there in the office, going over everything, the affair, the stolen money, the lying, felt like I was in someone else's nightmare. My lawyer, Jake, was straightforward. He told me that I had a strong case for both divorce and financial theft, especially with the evidence I'd brought. He also warned me that was likely to spin the story her way, claiming I'd sabotaged her career and manipulated her into the affair. That was her typical defense, playing the victim. That night, I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time I was more prepared. I sat her down, told her I had everything I needed to go to the lawyer and that I was done playing her games. Her eyes narrowed and she spat out, "You're just trying to control me. You're jealous because I'm successful and you're afraid I'll leave you." She tried to turn it around, claiming I was the one cheating, that I'd been unfaithful, and that I'd stolen money too. I just stared at her. I'd heard enough lies. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I was taking everything she'd stolen, our house, our savings, whatever she tried to hide. Her reaction was a mix of anger and panic. She started yelling, calling me a controlling bastard, saying I was ruining her career, and that I was just a jealous, bitter man who couldn't handle her success. She claimed I'd sabotaged her, that I'd been suspicious for months, and that I was just trying to justify my own failures. I didn't buy any of it. To me, it was all just a desperate attempt to keep her from losing everything. She kept insisting she was innocent, that she'd never cheat or steal from us, but I knew better now. I'd seen the messages, the bank transfers, the evidence was undeniable. Over the next few days, I started to prepare everything legally and financially. I contacted a private investigator to dig into her financials further. I wanted to know exactly where that money went, who she was talking to, what she was hiding. I also made copies of all the evidence I had, screenshots, bank statements, messages. I was determined to get to the truth, no matter how ugly it was. Meanwhile, was still trying to spin her story. She claimed I was a jealous husband who was jealous of her success, that I'd been trying to hold her back. She insisted she loved me, but her actions told a different story. I saw her sneaking around, lying, and now stealing from us. I felt a mixture of heartbreak and rage. Heartbreak because I loved her once, and rage because she'd done this to me, to our family. I started to realize that my life was about to change forever. The trust was broken, and I didn't know if I could ever fix it. But at least I was finally taking control of the situation, and that gave me a sliver of hope. The day I filed for divorce was like stepping into a different world. I sat across from Jake, my lawyer, and laid everything out. The evidence, the bank statements, the messages. We drafted the papers, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I was finally taking action, and dread because I knew once I did, there be no turning back. Was furious when I told her I was going through with it. She called me a bastard, a control freak, a jealous maniac. Her voice was shrill, trying to guilt-trip me into backing down, but I was done listening. I told her she'd crossed the line, cheating, stealing, lying, and I deserved better than this. The next few weeks were attitude shifted between angry outbursts and fake tears. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I'd ruined her career and her reputation, that she'd never do something so horrible. She even told me I was just jealous of her success, that I'd always been insecure about her climbing the ladder at work. That was rich coming from her. She always played the victim, but I knew the truth. She'd been lying for months, sneaking around with her boss and stealing from us. Meanwhile, I was digging into her financials even more, trying to trace the money. The wire transfers led to some offshore accounts, but I couldn't access them without a court order. I hired a private investigator, Lisa, to follow her, gather more evidence, and see who else she might be involved with. Lisa's reports confirmed my suspicions. She was meeting outside of work, sometimes in hotels, sometimes in a rented apartment she kept in her maiden name. I felt sick just thinking about the things she'd been doing behind my back. And the money? It was gone, transferred to accounts in the Caribbean and Switzerland. She'd been laundering it, I was sure of that now. One night, I caught her trying to sneak out of the house with a couple of suitcases. She pretended she was just going to visit her sister, but I knew better. I blocked her at the door, told her I had enough. That was when she snapped. She started screaming, saying I was ruining her life, that I was a jealous, insecure husband who couldn't handle her success. She called me a controlling bastard, accused me of trying to destroy her reputation. It was all a big act, a desperate attempt to manipulate me into backing down. But I'd had enough. I told her she was leaving the house for good, that I'd see her in court. That night, I sat alone in the living room, feeling numb. The house felt empty, colder than ever. I realized how much I'd lost trust, respect, my marriage, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been betrayed in the worst ways possible, and I was finally taking steps to reclaim my life. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be legal battles, emotional pain, and probably more surprises. But I was done being the victim. I was going to fight for what was mine, our house, our savings, my dignity. It was a long road, but I was ready to face it. The court date finally arrived after weeks of legal back and forth. I remember sitting in that courtroom, feeling like I was watching my life unfold in slow motion. Was there, looking every bit the manipulative liar she'd always been, trying to appear innocent and hurt, but her eyes told a different story, one of guilt, desperation, and anger. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer presented the evidence. The bank statements, the wire transfers, the messages, the testimonies from Lisa about her secret meetings. His face turned red when confronted with the facts, but she kept insisting she was innocent, that I'd ruined her career and reputation, that she'd never do something so horrible. The judge wasn't convinced by her tears or her fake outrage. The evidence was overwhelming. It was clear had stolen over $200, $0 from our joint account, and her affair with was not just an affair but a betrayal that crossed every line. The court ordered her to return the money she'd stolen and set the terms for the divorce. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. It was over, but at what cost? Our house was in limbo, and I knew would fight to keep as much as she could. I was prepared for that, though. I had everything documented, all the evidence ready. During the proceedings, tried her best to turn the tables, claiming I'd been controlling and jealous, that I'd sabotaged her career to get revenge. She even accused me of manipulating her into the affair, which was so absurd I almost laughed. I knew her game, playing the victim, twisting everything to her benefit. But the judge saw through it. He sentenced her to repay the stolen money, and the divorce was granted. I was finally free of her, but the scars remained. In the aftermath, I moved out of the house, leaving her to deal with the legal mess she'd created. I rented an apartment nearby and started rebuilding my life. I changed my phone number, cut ties with most of her friends, and focused on my kids. I wanted to be there for them, to give them stability after everything that had happened. I also started therapy to process the betrayal, because honestly, I'd never felt so broken and angry in my life. The trust I'd once had in her was gone, replaced by a bitter realization that the person I loved had been hiding this all along. Looking back now, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. I learned to trust my instincts, to keep a closer eye on the people around me, especially the ones I thought I knew. I learned that some people are just selfish and manipulative, willing to destroy everything for their own gain. And I learned that revenge, while satisfying in the short term, doesn't fix the pain. Only time and healing can do that. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's to trust yourself, gather evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Because sometimes, the only way to move forward is to tear down the lies and rebuild from the ground up. Now, looking back, I realize that this whole ordeal changed me in ways I didn't expect. I used to believe in happily ever afters, in the idea that marriage was about trust and loyalty. But what I've learned is that sometimes, the person you love the most can be the one who hurts you the deepest. Betrayal shattered that illusion, and it took a long time to put the pieces back together. I've become more guarded, more cautious about who I trust, and I've developed a sharper sense of my own worth. That's not to say I've lost faith in love entirely, but I definitely see it differently now. The biggest lesson I've taken from all this is that no matter how much you love someone, you can't ignore the signs. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't dismiss your instincts. And don't let anyone, partner, friend, or even family, gaslight you into thinking you're overreacting. The truth always comes out, sooner or later. When it does, you have to be ready to face it head-on, even if it's painful. Because hiding from the truth only prolongs the agony. I also want to say that revenge isn't a cure-all. It might feel good in the moment, seeing her face when she got served, knowing I'd exposed her lies, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't bring me peace. What finally helped was acceptance. Accepting that I was betrayed, accepting the pain, and choosing to focus on rebuilding my life for myself and my kids. That's what truly set me free. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'll say this: don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Gather your evidence, get legal help if needed, and don't let guilt or shame keep you silent. You deserve honesty and respect, and you don't have to accept anything less. It's going to hurt, and it's going to be messy, but eventually you'll find your way out of the darkness. And when you do, you'll realize that you're stronger than you ever thought possible. I'm still healing, still learning to trust again, but I know now that I'm capable of surviving even the worst betrayals. And that's what keeps me going.